Stop all the clocks. Cut off the telephone. Prevent the dog from barking with a juicy bone. Silence the pianos and with muffled drum, bring out the coffin. Let the mourners come. Let the aeroplanes circle moaning overhead, scribbling on the sky the message, he is dead. Put great bows round the white necks of the public doves. Let traffic policemen wear black cotton gloves. He was my north, my south, my east and west, my working week and my Sunday rest, my noon, my midnight, my talk, my song. I thought that love would last forever. I was wrong. The stars are not wanted now. Put out everyone. Pack up the moon and dismantle the sun. Pour away the ocean and sweep up the wood. For nothing now can ever come to any good.
Just heard Stop All the Clocks by W.H. Auden, read by John Hannah in that incredibly famous scene from Four Weddings and a Funeral. He is, of course, grieving his beloved partner, Gareth, and that reading of the poem has come to epitomise an expression of heartfelt grief and anguish at the loss of a loved one. And our Old Testament reading for this Sunday, 2 Samuel 1, verses 17 to the end, is similarly a lament poem for two men that have died. David intones a lamentation for Saul and his son Jonathan, who have both died in battle. David and Jonathan had a famously close relationship and deep bond. Here's part of David's lamentation. Tell it not in Gath, proclaim it not in the streets of Ashkelon. All the daughters of the Philistines will rejoice, and the daughters of the uncircumcised will exult. You mountains of Gilboa, let there be no dew or rain upon you, nor bounteous fields. For there the shield of the mighty was defiled, the shield of Saul anointed with oil no more. Jonathan lies slain upon your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Greatly beloved were you to me. Your love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. How the mighty have fallen, and the weapons of war perished. The laments are quite different, but they share some similarities. David calls for the end of dew and rain and the end of bountiful harvests, echoing that stop all the clocks. And of course, we've needed to rediscover a language of lament as we've journeyed through this appalling pandemic of COVID-19. We need to find ways of mourning together. Yet, despite Auden poem having come to represent genuine, heartfelt grief, in the play for which it was composed, its role is actually to mock the pompous, routine, public display of grief that accompanies the death of mighty rulers. The play, The Ascent of F6, which is a mountain, is about politics, power, and sibling rivalry. The lament, Stop All the Clocks, is written for an unpleasant senior civil servant who dies at the hand of his brother while seeking to gain political advantage over his nation's opponents. And of course, the story of Saul, the king, and of David and Jonathan is also political. Saul has been trying to kill David for some time out of a deep jealousy for his success in battle, and Jonathan has been trying to protect him. But texts have a life of their own. Their original context, or the intention of the author is not all-controlling. Original meanings can be lost. Historical context can be hard to recreate or understand, or new uses for a text changed its meaning. And that's what's happened with Stop All the Clocks, from political satire to heartfelt expression of grief. And that's important for us as Christians to remember, because we rely on the reading and interpreting of sacred texts as an essential part of our Christian faith. Yet the receiving, reading, and interpreting of the Bible is never a neutral act. It is fed by our contexts, our stories, who we've read the text with before, what they've said, and who we read the text with now. The church also has a history of interpretation and understanding. The David and Jonathan story is an important one to illustrate this point, because it's come to be part of contemporary discussions around homosexuality and its place and role within the Judeo-Christian tradition. Remember those lines in the lament where David says that Jonathan's love for him was wonderful, passing the love of women. What might that mean? The depth of feeling between David and Jonathan has provoked much consideration. Listen, for instance, to the description of their first meeting. Now it came about, when he had finished speaking to Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as himself. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David, because he loved him as himself. Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David with his armour, including his sword and his bow and his belt. So David went out wherever Saul sent him and prospered, and Saul set him over the men of war. Some commentators therefore see with David and Jonathan a clear homoerotic relationship, while others stress their deep friendship but insist it's a platonic one. I wonder what matters most: the author's intention, the original meaning, finding out exactly what is true, how we receive the text today, listening to our own contexts, or figuring out what God is saying to us today. Stop All the Clocks, in 4 Weddings and a Funeral, spoke a language of grief and mourning that resonated deeply with millions of viewers. The poem has become common at funeral services, and the love that the 2 men in the film had for each other was inspiring and moving. David and Jonathan cared deeply for each other, and that love led them too to acts of selflessness. Love, similarly today, brings people together across divides, sometimes to challenge family and societal prejudices and to bring healing. The loss of those we love, whoever they are, brings deep pain. And today we need to rediscover that language of lament and loss, and to honour the stories of grief and pain that are woven throughout our experience of the last 18 months. What seems to me to matter most deeply is that in loving other people in a selfless way, that we experience and encounter God, and indeed participate in the divine love which is part of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We can be confident that in our grief, God is listening to us and truly feels our pain.